Okay, security. So first slide I wanted to put up. So the cloud's got a pretty bad reputation when it comes to security. So put this slide together. This is some of the high-profile security breaches. Oh, it does work. That we've had in the last year or so. So if we look at the top here, it's pretty June of last year, pretty major hack. Almost 25 million user accounts compromised. That would be email, credit card number, phone numbers. That was Sony. They got hacked again. They had a bad month in June. 2 weeks later, they got hacked again. Another million accounts compromised. Other ones we've got down there. Another 24 million accounts compromised on Zappos. And then going into this year, recently, Apple, 12 million or so accounts, and a few other high-profile accounts. So some of the big ones, they're getting credit card numbers from these big public cloud infrastructures. Other ones are getting passwords. Passwords are dangerous because the hackers will use those passwords to compromise other platforms. Because lots of people, you obviously in their audience will only use one platform, one password per platform, obviously, and you're not susceptible. But these breaches allow the hackers to build up a profile of your usage and go and use that information to try and compromise other accounts. So yeah, pretty bad view of the public cloud infrastructure. So from a cloud risk profile, what I've tried to do on this slide is map each of the cloud offerings in the market against what the risk profile might be. So the first thing, if you put them on a grid, the first interesting thing is your ability to enforce security policy. So as an organization, most organizations will have a pretty refined set of requirements which says you are allowed to do X, Y, and Z. From a security policy point of view, you're absolutely not allowed to do A, B, and C. Okay, so if we're to take services, if we move from the public to the private cloud, yeah, software as a service to infrastructure as a service, our ability to enforce our security policy on our platform of choice increases. So right down in here, if we've got a public software as a service platform, we're taking Salesforce.com, for example, we essentially have to sign up to Salesforce.com's usage policy. We follow their password policy, and we do all those sorts of things. But if we're up in the private cloud here and it's infrastructure as a service, it's all our own kit. We control it all. We can absolutely push our security policy onto that environment. And then the other interesting thing is the whole susceptibility to abuse. So we looked at our previous slide. Yeah, some of these hacks here, certainly the Sony 1 and Sony 2, is actually we saw the hackers using one public cloud infrastructure to attack another public cloud infrastructure. So they were able to compromise, sign up for public cloud services using fake credit cards, form an infrastructure, a platform to attack another environment, and then use that platform which they signed onto with fake credit cards to go and attack another infrastructure. Here you go. Here's some more bad news when it comes to big public cloud infrastructures. And it may seem that I'm having a big dig here at all the public cloud providers. What I'm just trying to highlight is there are security issues, and people do suffer outages. Now, the thing that these big public cloud infrastructures suffer from is media attention when they do have a little bit of a wobble. People do have outages. So what I've tried to highlight here is the reasons why. So we've got Twitter falling over there, and we've got a software bug. Sounds familiar. We've got AWS here. We've got power issue. So they're not immune. So they've got a big infrastructure, but fundamentally it's being delivered from somewhere, which has caused a power problem. Gmail, misconfiguration during upgrade. Oh dear. That would never happen to any of us in the room, surely. Amazon EC2, routing issue. And again, famously, Microsoft Azure has been running for Obviously not quite 4 years, because the first time it hit a leap year, it fell over in a big nasty heap. So what I'm trying to flag up there is the cloud is not magic. You know, lots of media hype about the cloud is the future and it's fantastic. We need to understand that it's a multi-tenanted, on the most part, public cloud infrastructures, a multi-tenanted computing platform. What does that mean? It means it's a load of computers run by human beings who can make mistakes, following, hopefully, some sort of process to try and make sure they don't make those mistakes, using some technology, whatever that is. And people who are looking after it, and the servers that they're looking after, which form the cloud infrastructure, are somewhere in a geographic location. So it's not, the cloud doesn't exist, this big ether. It's actually, there's real people there, real computers looking after them from a physical location. Okay, and what you've also got to remember about the cloud is, whilst you can outsource your services, the risk and the governance still stays with your organization. So it's still your responsibility as an organization to understand who you're getting into bed with. Okay? So when you're thinking of moving your services out into the cloud, some of the things you need to consider, and you should ask your cloud provider, are things really about the 4 things I just highlighted. So the first one is people. So how many staff have access to my data? Okay, so the more people have got access to your systems, the greater the security risk. The organizations you're going to push your services out into the cloud, subdivide their teams, or is every single man and his dog got to log into your platform? Do they share usernames? Is it just a single username and every single man in the company's got access to it? Where are the people based? Okay, they're based in the UK. Are they based in the States? Is information traveling across to the outside of jurisdiction when the guys are logging into your systems? They're based in other parts of the world which maybe haven't got such robust security controls. Have they been security cleared and vetted? So can we find this out? Will my cloud provider give me an answer on whether the people have been vetted? Is their access audited? So is there a trail? So if somebody does something to one of your systems, is there the ability for you to go back to your provider and say, yeah, who did what and when? Okay, and what level of training? So people kind of overlook this quite a lot on their due diligence process, but if we look back to one of the examples earlier where there was a misconfiguration during an upgrade, that was probably because it either wasn't change managed properly, we're going to come on to that in a sec, or the people doing the change weren't trained to the right level. Okay, processes. Bugbear for lots of organizations, change management. So there's customers out there who love change management processes and swallow the ITIL handbook. There are customers out there who think change management is not for me. But the whole problem with change is if you introduce change onto a live platform, you introduce risk for outage and for compromise. So are people going onto your platform, changing things willy-nilly, causing problems later on, leaving the door wide open from a security point of view? Is there anybody looking at those changes and understanding what the impact is? Okay, is your provider following some sort of information security management system? Yeah. So is there a bit of process going on which says actually opening up that customer's database server to the whole world is a really bad idea? We shouldn't do it. What logical security controls are put in? So is your cloud provider offering you off the shelf some sort of vanilla build where all of the security flaws are open to the world? Or is there some sort of lockdown build that they'll give you and hand that over to you before you load your service on? Technology. So everybody, when they think about security mitigations, usually jumps straight to technology. And It is an important thing, but not the only thing. So, you know, does your platform have a firewall? Most should. In that firewall, is there intrusion prevention or intrusion detection systems? Is there anything in there looking for malformed packets? Is there an optional extra for you to get that? DDoS protection. So we see right now the biggest threat to any public-facing infrastructure is a DDoS attack. So DDoS attacks are extremely difficult to mitigate against. Somebody launches a DDoS attack against your environment. It's a very, very difficult and sometimes expensive thing to mitigate against. Can your provider offer you DDoS protection? And do they give you things like antivirus on your server? So if an attacker manages to get through your firewall, through your IPS, maybe through your DDoS protection, and actually are managing to send packets to your server, is there something on the server which can detect viruses, malware, etc., etc.? And the last one is location. So is your cloud platform housed in a suitable location? A data center, proper pucker data center of a certain tier, with all the things that a certain tier data center should have with regards to resiliency. Again, what are the physical and logical security controls on that data center? There's little point in having everything locked down logically if somebody can just walk in off the street and just take the server and walk away with it. Okay, is your location, your data center or the office space in which your organization provides service, is it owned by them or is it a third party? So if it's a third party, we need to make sure our due diligence goes down through the supply chain. There's little point in having everything tied up on the top level if your bottom part of the supply chain is not following any security best practice. Resiliency and failover. So is there a single data center running my cloud platform? Is there 2 data centers? Is there more? Are there any single points of failure within my data center infrastructure? Is there, will my data center continue providing service if there's a power outage, if they lose mains connectivity? And geographic location. So some cloud providers will tell you exactly where their data centers are, some won't. So the whole security piece, so back to this slide. So what you've got to do with regards to your data is understand what it is you're putting out into the cloud. So it might well be you ask all of these questions, you get answers which you're happy with or you're not happy with. But it's about building a risk profile picture for that data. So you might be much more comfortable putting some information which is public knowledge out into a big public cloud infrastructure. You might not be able to get a true picture of where all the geographic locations are, whether Fred Blogs, who logs into my server, has ever been on a training course. But from a risk profile point of view, that might be okay because the threat to your organization of getting that data compromised is practically nil. On the other hand, you might look at some of your data and say, well, you know what? If we were to lose this information, and it could be catastrophic for our business, we need to make sure we get all of these questions answered to our satisfaction.